What's going on YouTube? Today we're talking about the ZF 8-speed transmissions, specifically those found in Chrysler, Ram, Dodge, and Jeep. Whether you drive a Chrysler 300 or a Ram pickup truck, maybe a Dodge Charger, or if you're like me and you drive a Jeep Grand Cherokee. We're going to try to answer some questions about ZF transmissions. We'll be talking about whether or not you should change the lifetime fluid, the facts around that, fluid options other than the OEMs with specs, different methods for changing, whether you should flush or drain and fill, parts availability, especially in Canada, and options for servicing other than the dealer. So let's dive right into it. Should you change the transmission fluid on your ZF transmission, despite the fact that it says right on the little sticker, this is a lifetime fluid or fill for life, or in your owner's manual it says you do not need to service this transmission, it's a sealed transmission. If you're watching this video, then you're probably like me and you firmly believe in doing regular maintenance. Basically, the fluid for life thing, that's just a marketing ploy. Dodge isn't the only one to do it. BMW does it. Some other companies do it as well. I'll show you here pretty quickly where the manufacturer of the transmission actually says they do recommend a change. But even before that, I mean, you can go online and do your own research. You have here, for example, this is a website talking about transmission fluid. Shows you what happens at different temperatures. A fluid can only absorb so much heat and so much punishment. And so for a manufacturer to say, well, the fluid is good for the lifetime of the vehicle or the transmission, basically all they're saying is when the transmission dies, then the fluid has essentially lasted the life of that transmission. But what happens if the fluid is the cause of the transmission to die? So if you're like me and you want your transmission to last, then doing regular fluid changes, regular maintenance is essential. So for me personally, I wouldn't change the transmission fluid on your Chrysler product before the warranty's up. I mean, besides the fact that there's no point doing that because everything's covered up to that point anyway. You do risk voiding your warranty, particularly if you use a different fluid than what they recommend from the manufacturer, which that's what we're going to get into a little later on in the video. So just a couple quick points here in black and white. I will include this little write-up. I'll include the link here in the description, but this is an interesting little, fairly in-depth write-up talking about the Chrysler version of the ZF transmissions, when they started using them, the plant they built in North America to manufacture these, goes into some pretty specific detailed information about the transmissions themselves, specifications, the relationship between ZF and Chrysler, and all that kind of stuff. So pretty good little read there if you're interested, if you own a Ram or a Jeep or Chrysler product. So I found two black and white written down examples of where ZF says that they recommend transmission fluids. This is one of them. So this is found online. It's a data sheet for the Lifeguard 8 fluid, which is the fluid that they recommend in the specifically for the ZF 8-speed transmissions. And you can see here, ZF automatic transmissions are generally filled with a lifetime oil. However, due to many factors, including or influencing the service life of transmission in individual operation, ZF recommends an oil change after 150,000 kilometers for its transmissions. In operating conditions with high temperatures and loads, or with unknown vehicle use in the past, it can make sense to change the transmission at shorter intervals. So there was one write-up from them. I found one that's probably a little bit more recent. Again, this is another write-up. They talk about their 8 ZF transmissions, and it says here, automatic transmissions are filled maintenance-free with specially developed partially synthetic ATF oils. maintenance-free fills are intended for normal operating conditions, especially driving at very high operating temperatures can result in accelerated aging or increased wear of ATF oils. It is recommended in the event of severe operating conditions such as frequent highway driving, top speed range, offensive sporty driving, or frequent trailer operation being above average. On automatic transmissions is recommended between 80,000 and 120,000 kilometers or 8 years. I know that contradicts what was just read in the other one when it said 150,000 kilometers, but basically there it is again in black and white. This is the manufacturer of the transmission saying that they do recommend a change. And I did find one little YouTube clip you might find interesting. It's some guys, ZF guys, at some type of workshop or forum, and they're talking about
Ein Drittel aller Fahrzeuge, die bei uns in die Werkstatt kommen und auch zu euch in die Werkstatt kommen, haben Automatikgetriebe.
Looks like they're talking to mechanics.
DSG-Getriebe, kennt ihr alle. So, Öl raus, neuen Filter rein, neues Öl rein, klatsch, das Ding ist fertig.
Genau, aber bei so einem Automatikgetriebe, von so einem Wagen zum Beispiel, kann man ja gar keinen Ölwechsel machen. Braucht man ja auch nicht machen. Hier ist so eine Ölwanne von so einem Automatikgetriebe, da steht das drauf.
Lifetime Öl.
Lifetime Öl.
Now there's that exact sticker on well, my Jeep and any Chrysler product. Exact sticker, same thing, saying that this is filled with lifetime oil. The only difference is their sticker with Chrysler says to use Mopar 8 and 9 speed oil, and it has a part number for them. But same thing.
Also der Hersteller von dem Auto sagt ganz klar, da braucht er nichts dran zu machen.
Und das stimmt nicht. Das
see
sagt
here,
nämlich nur
that's not
der
right.
Hersteller der Autos.
That's the car manufacturer saying so, not the transmission manufacturer. ZF clearly says perform oil service every 100,000 kilometers. So there you have it. I'll include this link in the video as well. You guys can check out the whole thing if you want to. But yeah, it's pretty clear. For section 1, should you change your fluid? Yes. When should you do it? I would say do it after your warranty is up and if you want to increase the life of your vehicle. Alright, so diving right into fluids. There is probably more controversy on this subject than anything else to do with these transmissions. There is a ton of information online contradicting itself, arguments back and forth, a ton of controversy on forums, guys saying, you know, don't veer away from using the OEM fluid, it's dangerous, and other guys, you know, claiming, oh, I've been using this fluid for 100,000 kilometers, it worked great, there's no problem. I'll try to help kind of shed through some of that and help explain where a lot of that controversy comes from. Why it exists. The ZF transmissions became widely used in North America around 2012 when they got introduced to the Chrysler products. And at that time there wasn't a lot of fluid available for them. Now in 2020 there's a lot, and so you do have a lot of options in terms of fluid now. But one of the reasons that the big controversy exists is that manufacturers of fluids will say this fluid is recommended for use or suitable for use or is now recommended for use in ZF transmissions. And ZF releases their own page about that, and it's called TEML. It's a list of the lubricants that they accept. So if you go to the automatic transmissions page, you go down to the 8 speeds here. The automatic transmission fluids that are listed here, right? All of these are all ZF8 fluid. They're just rebranded. So this part number, which is actually, that's not even the right part number anymore. Now there's a new one. But the Chrysler part number for Mopar 8 and 9 speed automatic transmission fluid, that fluid is Lifeguard 8 fluid. It's just rebranded and sold by Mopar. As is all of these. And so it's very important to understand the relationships going on here and understand what causes these controversies. Lifeguard 8 Lifeguard makes a fluid for their transmissions, and they're not going to endorse or promote a company's fluid or another fluid if they don't get anything out of that. So Chrysler sells Mopar 8 and 9-speed automatic transmission fluid. Well, it is Lifeguard 8 fluid, right? And they have a relationship between each other worth hundreds of millions of dollars, licensing deals worth tens of millions of dollars, right? I mean, ZF sells 3.5 million transmissions a year. Chrysler probably buys almost 1 million of them, or makes almost 1 million of them, and uses their fluid. So, of course, Chrysler's fluid is going to be on the approved list. Same with Jaguar, BMW, all these other companies. They're on the approved list because they have an outstanding relationship with ZF. And so it's profitable for probably both sides. Now, whether Chrysler buys a whole bunch at a bulk price and then marks it up and sells it, or whether they just pay ZF a licensing fee, or the other way around, a royalty, who knows? But the bottom line is that that relationship exists, and so it's worth a lot of money. So when you look at this list of approved fluids and you don't see companies like Amsoil and Valvoline and Pentacin and these other companies that make fluid, it's not necessarily because those fluids don't work or that ZF has tested them and they're not approved or that they don't meet the spec. It's because if I make a fluid for my own transmission, why am I going to endorse or promote another company's oil when I don't get anything out of the sale of that? That's just simply not good business. It doesn't make any sense. In turn, it doesn't make it a legitimate statement from these companies. When these companies, you look at some of these things and they say mainly intended for use in ZF transmissions, that statement is the company saying that, right? Recommended for ZF TM-L11. That recommendation is coming from Ravenol. That's not coming from ZF. And the reason it's not coming from ZF isn't necessarily because this fluid isn't good or wouldn't work. It's because, like I said, the relationship doesn't exist. And so that's where a lot of the controversy comes in, right? Is, these companies say that they meet spec on a fluid, and the ZF says, well, we're not adding you to our list of approved fluids. So, couple points. ZF Lifeguard 8 fluid is a semi-synthetic fluid. It is not a full synthetic fluid. You can find that right here. So this is a sheet you can download for servicing your transmissions. It gives you step-by-step instructions for bolt torques on the transmission pans and all this stuff. Ways to check your fluid level properly. But they say right here in this thing, ZF automatic transmissions are filled with specially developed semi-synthetic oils. So it's not a full synthetic oil, despite what some people might tell you. In Canada, it's extremely expensive. So you can see here's ZF Lifeguard 8. 7 liters of it is $556 Canadian. That's a fairly extreme example. If you shop around, you can find better deals. But even the Mopar 8 and 9 speed, here it is on eBay in Canada for $40 a liter. It's expensive stuff, and that's why people look for alternatives. So, when you see Lifeguard 8 fluid advertised, it comes with a part number, and you'll very often see it associated to this Shell ML12108. This fluid is equivalent to Shell ML12108, right? And even if you go to Google and type in ZF Lifeguard 8 equivalent, the first thing that pops up is this message, Shell ML12108. So, what is Shell 12108, and what does it mean to be equivalent to it? A lot of guys talk about meeting spec. So what is the spec? Well, fortunately, you can find the information online. So Shell 12108, I had to email Shell, and they were kind enough to send me some information about it. Shell 12108 is not a fluid you can buy over the counter. It's specifically made for Audi. It's sent to Audi in bulk drums. The way that the guy explained it to me in the email is basically this fluid is sent to Audi in vast quantities, is how he worded it. So probably it's at their production facility where they're producing cars or rolling off the line, the Audi production line, and they have big tanks of this to put into the transmission fluids, or the transmissions of those vehicles. If I had to take a guess, I would imagine that Audi probably had a pre-existing relationship with Shell before, and then Audi engineers started incorporating ZF transmissions into their cars, at which point Audi went to Shell and said, we need you to make a fluid that meets these specifications, and this is what Shell came up with. So there you go, you can see there's that list again, the TEML11. So what does it mean to actually meet spec, right? Well, this is the specification for the Shell 12108, and all the products also have similar specifications to them. I'm not a scientist, but I can run through them quickly, give you what I do know. This one's pretty basic. If you were to fill a container a meter by a meter by a meter at 15 degrees centigrade, it would weigh 846 kilograms of this fluid. Viscosity at 40 degrees centigrade, it's measured in millimeters per second squared. I'm not a scientist, but it's basically a way of just measuring how fluid the liquid is at a certain temperature, how well it runs. So that's 26. The viscosity at 100 degrees centigrade is obviously lower, so of course the hotter you get a fluid, the easier it's going to, more liquid and easier, the more viscous it's going to become. So it has a lower viscosity. If you take these numbers and you punch them into a chart, you can do a mathematical formula that will give you a viscosity index. That's the chart that you can refer to. There's another one, and there's a calculator you can do online. Flash point is basically the lowest temperature at which the fluid will become a vapor and become combustible. 200 degrees centigrade, that's 400 degrees Fahrenheit. I can guarantee your transmission is going to be dead before you ever get near that temperature. The pour point is the lowest temperature at which you can pour the fluid out. And the Brookfield viscosity, they explain online this one. They lower a disc into a container of the fluid, and they spin the disc with a machine, and that machine measures the resistance, or how much energy it takes to spin that disc in that fluid at minus 40, and they come up with a number called the Brookfield viscosity. So I went ahead and pulled up all the data. Here's ZF's fluid, and this is their characteristics or fluid data. So that's the Lifeguard 8 fluid there, and I went ahead and made a chart of all the fluids that I found online. So here's that chart. You can pause it on this. I'll try to attach it in the description, but there's the Lifeguard 8 fluids specifications, and here's Valvoline, Raxol, Motul, Pentacin, a few, the Amsoil in the red line. I added the Shell at the end just for some comparison. So when companies talk about meeting or exceeding specs, so for example, if the pour point of Lifeguard 8 is minus 42, any of the ones that can be poured at lower temperatures are exceeding that number. So they can do better than that. You can see in the case of Amsoil, it's minus 65. Flash points are all pretty similar. I think really what matters in these is the viscosities of them at the higher temperatures and the Brookfield viscosities. So when people talk about meeting spec, that's what they're talking about. Let's go over now a couple of the fluids. So as I mentioned before, lots of companies will claim that their fluid meets or exceeds specs. They'll use sentences like now recommended for. Again, you have to take that with a grain of salt. That means it's recommended for by Valvoline, not by ZF. In turn, just because ZF doesn't recommend it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not because it wouldn't work or that it's not good. So here's Valvoline, ZF Lifeguard 8 right there. There's that Shell 12108 in the miscellaneous OEMs. Valvoline is really widely available. In Canada, you can get it at Walmart, a couple other stores. It's easy to find online, and it's by far the cheapest. Raxol was another one. I couldn't find it here in Canada, but you can see that it comes with a Belgium address, so it's probably widely available in Europe. Again, there's that ZF Lifeguard 8 right there. Mainly intended for 6 or 8-speed automatic transmissions from ZF. Motul is one that's widely used in Europe, I believe. Same kind of thing. There's the properties of it, and they have a list as well. If you go down, you can see here ZF, there's that Lifeguard 8 number. Shell, there's that 12108. There's Mopar's 8 and 9-speed automatic transmission fluid. The TEML11, that's the standards they're going by. That doesn't mean that they're on the list. So, again, you know, just another way of them saying, like, you know, we're recommending that this fluid is okay for these transmissions. And not all these are easy available. Here's another one, another European one. Same kind of thing, you know. So there's the Mopar part number for the 8.9. That's the old one. So these guys wouldn't release their characteristics. That's why on that list it says NA, NA, NA. They explain here that they will not give their technical data. But yeah, AMSOIL Signature Series, Pentacin, ATF8 is another one. Now this one is widely available at Lordco in British Columbia, Canada. That's a parts store. And this one is also listed on Rock Auto. So when I went on Rock Auto and I typed in my vehicle, the 2014 Grand Cherokee with the 8 HP 70, Valvoline came up, Liquid Moly, which I couldn't find any information on, Pentacin, and the Mopar. These are all the fluids that Rock Auto says is acceptable or what they carry. You can see the price difference in them. Definitely the Mopar is the most expensive. Pentacin $17. It was more like $25 in Lordco. So you got Amazon, AMSOIL. Sorry, not Amazon. AMSOIL. You got Redline. Same kind of thing. Chrysler ZF. And there's probably going to be, there's that Shell 12108 right there. So again, lots of different options out there. Do your research. Understand that, you know, understand the difference between when the manufacturer says it's not recommended or recommended for use. They're running a business, and they're, you know, ZF isn't going to promote another company's product for no reason. Other companies, you know, maybe they don't want to pay the licensing to ZF or whatever. But for myself, I'm comfortable enough using the Valvoline. That's what I'm going to go with. And the main reason behind that for me was that there was a ton of information online with reviews of people having used it. A lot of guys with Dodge Rams, the Eco Diesels, and the Grand Cherokees saying, you know, I've used this for 100,000 kilometers now and it works great, fine. It's readily available close to me, and I've found enough information that I'm comfortable using it in my vehicle. But again, you know, it's important to do your own research, make your own decision. I will do some follow-up videos about how my vehicle's running after, you know, putting that in there, and I'll let you know if I notice any differences or anything like that. So there you go. That's part 2, fluids. Alright guys, so we're going to make this section really quick because this video is starting to get long. But basically your service options. With this transmission, you don't have the same service options that you do with other transmissions. Basically, everybody knows that you can either have your transmission flushed with a machine, or you can just do a drain and fill. The reason that you can't do a flush with the ZF transmissions is that they have something in them called a thermostatic bypass valve, which is basically a thermostat in the transmission cooling lines. And here's an animation of it, and it actually does look just like this, at least in the Grand Cherokee. Mine looks exactly like that, but essentially what it does is this valve stays closed when the transmission oil is cold. And so say you start your vehicle in minus 20 degrees, there's no need for your fluid to be getting pumped through the cooler and cooled off. So what happens is the valve stays closed and the fluid just gets redirected back into the transmission and cycled it through there until it gets warm enough. I believe it's like 76 degrees is what I read. At 76 degrees, the transmission, the valve will open, allowing the fluid to go out to the cooler and complete the cycle through the cooler and then back in. And so because of this thermostatic bypass valve, when you hook up a normal flush machine that pumps fluid in while it pumps fluid out, that doesn't work, because when the new fluid gets in, it's not hot enough and this valve closes and then it shuts off the cycle. You don't get any of the fluid through the lines and out of the cooler and all that, and it shuts off that way of doing things. But that doesn't mean you don't have other options. Do some research. I recommend asking around. Where I live in Canada, there's a company called Great Canadian Oil Change. They have a different machine that basically they stick a wand in your transmission pan. So they open up your fill hole and they stick a wand in there. And what it does is it sucks out 1 liter of fluid and then it pumps 1 liter of new fluid in. And your vehicle is running the whole time it does this. So your pump is continually circulating fluid around through your system. And for 200 Canadian dollars, they'll include 15 liters of the Valvoline Max Life. And so it works pretty well. They can get about 95% of the fluid. So, I mean, for that price, you can't really beat that. Unfortunately, obviously, that doesn't get your pan and filter changed. But that's the best way to get your fluid changed on these transmissions. I definitely will be doing that myself. Now that I have a new transmission pan and filter on, I'll definitely be changing my fluid, you know, at the 100,000 kilometer mark, or maybe a little sooner than that, with that method. So the other way, obviously, is you can just do a drain and fill it yourself. Drain and fill isn't actually that hard. Basically, once you're exposed your pan, there's a 10 millimeter Allen key head there on the bottom of your pan. Crack it open, drain out some fluid, and then there's your fill bolt. It's a Torx 8 mil, I believe. And you can go to Canadian Tire or another store and you can buy a little pump. You screw it right onto a 1 liter bottle on top of the 1 liter bottle, and you can pump fluid back in. So you could exchange the fluid with whatever kind of fluid you want to buy that way as well. The thing about that method is you only get about maybe 2 or 3 liters out of your pan at any given time, and I believe the capacity of this one is about 8.7 quarts or liters. So it would definitely take a few times doing that to get all the fluid exchanged, but still better than nothing, and not that difficult to do. So anyways, there you go. Do some research. I mean, going to the dealership is incredibly expensive. Going to transmission shops is going to be pretty expensive. You're looking at over $1,000 Canadian at a dealership in Canada. I've heard well over that in the United States as well. Transmission shops aren't going to be much less because they're going to want to use the OEM fluid and all that. So I guess it depends how important it is for you, if you really want to just change the fluid or if you think you need to change the filter. A lot of transmission shops I talked to thought that changing the filter wasn't really necessary, particularly in the sealed unit, that there shouldn't really be any big particles in there. So, I mean, I wanted to change my pan to get the magnets and new filter, but if you didn't do that, I'd still say changing your fluid is still better than not doing anything. So. Okay, so this part 4 should be pretty quick. Basically, if you look online, there is a lot of options for the pans. Don't go to your local Dodge dealership. They're going to charge you an arm and a leg. This particular pan from them in Canada here was about $400. It was available on Amazon. I think I saw it down as low as like $115. I ended up ordering this one from rockauto.com. It's a Dorman filter, and I ordered it for 2 reasons. Number one, it has a removable filter inside, so down the road, I don't have to buy this pan again. I can just remove the filter and buy that replacement filter. I think it's about $40. The other thing that I liked about this one is it does have all 4 magnets in place. I have seen a couple reviews of a couple of the ATP pans that guys bought, and they didn't have all the magnets. They only had 2. I've even seen a couple of the pans that had none. So I know the OEM one, the original one, has 4, so I thought it would be good to stick with 4 magnets. Other than that, it's pretty basic. This Dorman one comes with a nice heavy-duty rubber gasket. The 13 bolts that you're going to need. They're a Torx 40, T40. And yeah, so there is an honorable mention. I will mention, for those of you who have the Ram Eco Diesel, or for those of you who do a lot of towing, there was a pan available online that I saw called a PPE pan, and it was an aluminum one. Apparently it holds a couple extra liters of fluid, and because it's aluminum, it helps dissipate the heat quite a bit better. There was a few reviews of guys who had it on their trucks, and they were mentioning that they noticed quite a difference, about 20-degree difference in their highest temperature when they were towing heavy loads around up hills and stuff. I don't particularly need it for my, my Jeep, because I don't do a lot of heavy duty towing. I tow a small boat, but yeah, if you do a ton of towing, you might want to check that one out. I think it was around $200, maybe a little more, $220 or something. But if you do a lot of heavy duty towing, it might be a worthwhile investment. Heavier duty metal pan. Other than that, I'll let you guys, you can look online, check out, there's all kinds. Just my only advice would be, watch the reviews, make sure that you're buying something, that's had some people use it, and, read the reviews, make sure you understand what you're getting into. And yeah, other than that, we'll get right into the service. So there's my Grand Cherokee. I'm all ready on the ramps, set up. Put my air suspension up just to give myself a little extra room. And my plan is to basically go with a few drain and fills. So I'm gonna drain out the fluid, and then I'm going to fill it back up, drive around a little bit. I'm going to drain the fluid, fill it back up, drive around a little bit, and on the second time I drive around a little bit, I'm going to make sure that my transmission hits temperature, because there is a thermostatic bypass valve in my cooling line there, and if you don't get hot enough, that won't open and you won't cycle through the cooling lines. I don't know how much fluid is in there, but might as well get it all if you're going to get it. I went and bought 3 jugs of the Valvoline Max Life, so 15 liters total. And yeah, I'll show you guys. I'll take cups of each time I do a drain, and I'll show you progressively how they look. Went to Canadian Tire and just bought a little pump. I got this container with markings on it, so basically when I drain in there, what I'm going to do is, the vehicle has been cold, it's not been running, so I'll drain out the fluid into this container. I'll take my Sharpie pen and draw a line on the container exactly where the fluid got to, and then that's exactly how much I'll pump back in, and then I'll drive around. I'm going to do that twice before I change my before I drop the pan, just sort of in the hopes that it gets a little bit more of the gunk, and all that gunk goes into that filter that I'm removing, and then hopefully by the time I put the new pan on, it should be pretty much fresh fluid, and you'll be ready to go. So yeah, so other than that, obviously keep safety in mind. You know, make sure your vehicle's jacked up properly and all that. So other than that, I'll show you guys a little more when I get under the vehicle. Oh, one other thing. If you just go buy yourself a simple torque set, you'll see some videos online that tell you that you have to drop a crossbar. You have to undo these bolts on a cross member and then lift your transmission to be able to get at the rear bolts. You don't need to do that if you have one of these Allen key Torx bolts. I went to Canadian Tire and picked up this set, I think for about 15 bucks. So yeah, you can avoid all that. It is possible to do it without having to do that. It just takes a little bit more time. Okay, so now we're under the vehicle, and for starters, I'm looking toward the front of my car. For starters, there is this plastic cover that you're going to have to take off. So I believe there's 4 bolts. They're a 13 mil. 2 up front there, and then 1 right there. And this is that cross member I was telling you about. You'll see some videos where guys undo these bolts here, take that, and then they push up on this to give you extra room. But I'll show you in a minute how you don't really need to actually do that. So I'll take this cover off here, and then I'll show you exactly what you're going to need. You just need basic tools. So for starters, it's just a 13 mil socket. Alright, so with the cover off, you can see it exposes the pan, and these are the bolts that the guys are. You'll see videos where, you know, to get at those torque bolts in there, and the couple up in there. You'll see guys doing videos where, you know, they take these out and they push up on it and this and that. And like I say, if you have an Allen key Torx, then you don't really have to worry about any of that. So so basically for me, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to be undoing the drain plug and catching the fluid in my catch container. Like I say, I'm going to mark on there exactly how much fluid comes out, and that's exactly how much I'll pump back in. Before you do anything else, though, you want to make sure that you can actually undo that, because if that's your fill bolt, so if you can't undo that and then you drain fluid out, you could be in a bit of a jam. So this here is a 10 mil Allen key, and it'll ratchet as you open it. It'll sound like it's kind of breaking or whatever, but it's not. It's fine. So this one, I believe, is I'm not sure. I'll let you know later on. Okay, so just to recap here for you, I undid the 4 bolts for the plastic cover. That was a 13 mil socket. Came off pretty easy. I rinsed my plastic cover off because it was a little bit dusty and dirty in there. The longer bolts go at the front. I went and cracked my fill plug. It's a T50 Torx. I just did it. Just wanted to make sure that, you know, like I said, you don't want to start draining and then find out you can't open your fill plug. So just cracked it loose with that one. And then the drain plug is a number 10 Allen key. 10 mil Allen key, not a Torx. So yeah, I'm gonna take my $5 plan, stick it underneath, and I'll drain out the first amount of fluid there, show you how much I get exactly in the container, show you the color of it and all that, keep a sample, and go from there. Okay, so I was able to pull out my drain plug there and drain out the fluid. My plan for using this container to mark the level, that's not going to work because more came out than that. I'm actually surprised because all the guys that were writing in on the forum say they got about 3 liters out there, and that was a 3-quart container. So not a big deal. Anything that overflowed into this spill, this oil pan. So I'll just dump all the fluid into the oil pan and then dump it all into one of the Valvoline containers and mark the level. And that's how much I'll pump back in. I'll show you a condition of the fluid in a glass there, what it looks like in a clear glass so you can get an idea, and I'll show you what it looks like each progressive time I do a drain and flush. But yeah, that's pretty much the procedure right there. Okay, so got the pan off successfully. The fluid, it's hard to tell. I mean, obviously this fluid is already dark to start with, so it's hard to tell you know, if it doesn't smell burnt or anything. The magnets in my thing, they did have some metal on them. I mean, nothing over the top, but again, that's probably definitely why you want to stick, at least why I wanted to stick with the pan that had 4 magnets. I will say this bolt, if you're gonna start off, that one there is probably like the most difficult to get at, and so I would recommend undoing this one first so that you can fully get it out without having any drippings come out or anything like that. I mean, if you drain it fully first, it's not that bad with drippings, but yeah, other than that, there is a sequence for doing these back up, and it's basically just crisscrossing. So you start there, come here, go there, go there, go there, go there, go there, you know. So you basically just kitty corner when you're doing your bolts up. That's the pattern that you're supposed to do it in. It says on there, do up to 8 Newton meters, 8.8 Newton meters, which is 7 foot-pounds of torque. So not very tight. Obviously, you won't be able to get a torque wrench on the back ones, but 7 Newton meters not too hard. So yeah. So other than that, I'm just gonna pump it back up, and then there's a procedure for checking it. Once you think you have it full, there's a procedure that you have to follow for checking the proper fluid level, which is like starting the vehicle, letting it get up to temperature, and doing all that kind of stuff. So we'll get into all that after. Yeah. All right, guys, just to briefly end off, just to show you the part numbers. The pan you saw in the video was this one here. It's Dorman. This is Rock Auto. Dorman part number 265850. As I said, I'm very happy with it. It went in well. It does have the 4 magnets, which I think is important. Came with a nice heavy-duty gasket and had a really good reputation when reviewed on Amazon and all that. All good reviews. So that's the one there. Just thought I'd show you. Came within a couple days of me ordering it for a pretty reasonable price. I think it was $40 for shipping for 2 days or something. So yeah, and then this is that other one I was mentioning. This is that PPE metal pan, heavy duty aluminum pan for the Rams and anybody that uses that transmission. Again, pretty good reviews. I didn't really need that for my application, as I didn't do a ton of heavy duty towing, but if you do a lot of towing, this would definitely be something you might want to have a look at. So there you go. Alright guys, so here is just a final sort of review and a little update about how my vehicle's running since I did my exchange, and a couple tips of things that I learned along the way. So just to review the video we did, number one, should you do an exchange? Yep, yes you should. We covered that. Number two, different fluid options. Well, we know there's lots out there. Do your research. Number three, exchange options. Now you'll notice in the video that I went with the drain and fill, and I did it 4 times before I sort of became aware or learned that there was another alternative to a flush with a machine. And I'm about to show you here. I'll show you right now what the drain and fill looks like, and then I'll talk about after why I decided not to go with it anymore. All right, so just to follow up to the video, just wanted to show everybody what I was talking about with the fluids. And so I ended up doing a few drain and fills. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't do that again. I would just go to that fluid exchange that I talked about. I'll fill you a little more on that after, but I just wanted to show you basically, there you can see the original fluid. And if I swirl it around, you can see it's kind of a green color like that. This is what it looked like after the first drain. Probably exchanged about 3.5–4 liters. Didn't really seem to make much difference in the color. Second drain started getting a little more red. This is exchanging it with that Valvoline. And third drain, a little more red yet, you can see, but still retains that dark color. This is the fourth drain. And then this is what it looks like after exchanging it with that fluid exchange machine at the Great Canadian. So if you come on in, I'll just show you what each one looks like on a dab of paper. So you can see it wasn't really until about the second or third drain that I really started getting the difference of actually getting to clear red. This one's not really going to be, ran out of sticks, but so there you can see as you progress, and then of course this is what it looks like at the end with all the proper exchange. And one other thing I will show you guys, it doesn't take a lot. It may appear like by the fourth drain there wasn't a lot of difference, but I'll just show you. I'll take a little bit of the original fluid, just a bit of it, and I'll dump it in with completely clean fluid. And you can see there, it doesn't take much to make it sort of have a dark color. So when you see some of these, you can see there, doesn't take a lot for it to lose that bright red color. So anyways, there you go. And yeah, I hope that kind of helps make things clear. I'll talk a little bit more about what I would do next time differently than I did this time, and about how my vehicle's running. Okay, just hit pause. Not stop, pause. So why I decided not to go with it anymore is basically, if I had known at the beginning of this that I could just go to Great Canadian Oil Change and they would be able to exchange the fluid using the machine, I never would have bothered doing the drain and fill. The jugs of Valvoline that I bought cost me about 30 bucks a jug, so about 90 bucks. I got 15 liters, and even after the fourth drain and fill, as you just noticed in the previous video there, it still wasn't brand new fluid, and it was a lot of work compared to just pulling into the Great Canadian Oil Change and having them exchange the fluid. It cost 200 Canadian dollars to have it done with their Valvoline fluid. But the other nice thing is that you can bring your own fluid, and they'll put whatever fluid. So if you want to buy AMSOIL or some other fluid, they'll knock $40 off the price and exchange it with whatever fluid that you want to bring, at least at that Great Canadian Oil Change. Now, it's important to remember that even though they're a chain, they're independently owned, so you might call one and they might tell you no, we don't do that. So you might have to call around. But the other thing to remember is that if you decide to do just an exchange, you're not going to be changing your filter or clearing your magnets on your pan. It's still a lot better than doing nothing. So if you go in and you don't want to have to mess around underneath your vehicle at all, and you just want to get your fluid exchanged, that's still going to be a ton better than just leaving it and doing absolutely nothing to it. After my experience, what I'm going to do now is, now that I've changed my pan at about 105,000 kilometers, and I have the new filter in there, I'm not going to touch the filter again for another 100,000 kilometers, but I am going to exchange my fluid at 50,000 kilometers. And the reason is that it's important to remember that all these other companies, so like Valvoline, like I put in, or any of the other companies, they don't claim to be a lifetime fluid. And so with these fluids, you probably want to exchange them. I'm going to do mine every 50,000 kilometers. And I'll just go down to the Great Canal Change, have them exchange the fluid at 50,000 kilometers. And then at the next 100,000 kilometer mark, I will drain out my pan, replace the filter, put the pan back on, put the fluid that I drained out back in, and then go in and get the fluid exchanged. If I was ever to do something like this again, if you just do the fluid exchange at an oil change place, they won't, at Great Canal Change, they wouldn't touch my filter or the pan. So if you want to do the pan, what I would recommend doing next time, or what I would do next time, is next time if I did it, I would drain the pan, take the pan off, put the new pan on, and then take the fluid that I drained out, pump it back in, and then go and just get all the fluid exchanged with that machine. I wouldn't waste any money on buying new fluid. I wouldn't do any of that again. You have to dispose of it. You have to climb under your vehicle. It can be a little bit messy if you're not careful. So, all those things for 200 Canadian dollars, and that includes 15 liters of fluid, you can't beat it. There's just no way to beat it. So that's what I would do next time, having learned. A couple other points I will say. This transmission runs warm. If you can see the chart that's on the screen in front of me here, you can see that at 220 degrees is when it starts doing damage. Well, on my Grand Cherokee, it runs normally. The valve opens at 92 degrees centigrade, which is 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So most transmissions run at like 150 to 175 degrees. So these transmissions run warm. They run warmer than normal. And so the fluid is already taking a 20 degree, 30 degree higher temperature than it would normally take in a different transmission. And so, you're only 20 degrees off under normal driving conditions, at least in my vehicle. I'm assuming the Rams are probably the same. I don't know why ZF has the thermostatic bypass valve set to open at such a high temperature. Maybe they get better fuel economy when the fluid's extremely warm or something like that. But yeah, so keep in mind that, you're going to want to exchange the fluid that you replace. It's not a lifetime fluid. It doesn't claim to be a lifetime fluid. So, I would do it on a regular basis. Like I said, I'm going to do mine every 50,000 kilometers. One other thing I will mention too is the way that they do it with the machine. It avoids having to open your drain valve on your plastic pan, and that plastic drain valve, it is prone. They are prone to breaking. I actually broke mine when I was doing my second drain, which didn't matter because I was putting a new pan on. But even at the Great Canal Change, they mentioned that they are prone, because they're plastic, to stripping or breaking. So the less that you mess around with that thing, the better. They are not a one-use drain bolt. They do ratchet back in. You can do that, but I know that there is quite a bit of chat about them being a little on the frail side. So the other thing I will say is that it's very important that you do your check your level, fluid level properly. So one of the things that you'll find is that when you do the fluid exchange, your vehicle's running the whole time. And so at the point when they've done the exchange and it's now time to check the fluid level, your temperature is way too high to do a proper fluid level check. So the instructions are downloadable online. I'll put a link in it right here of how to do it. And it is important to do it exactly as it specifies in here. You want to do it between 30 to 50 degrees. If you're fortunate like me and you have a transmission temperature display on your dash, that's what I went by. But yeah, not all the exchange places, you know, even the guys at Great Canal Change didn't know all of these steps, you know, and so it's important to go back the next day and just when you're between those temperatures and have them do it. Run through each gear for the 5 or 10 seconds that it says, rev it up, let your torque converter fill. And the reason it's important to dry around a little bit first is you want that cooler thermostat to open. You want that valve to open so that it gets fluid into those lines and all that, and then the next day go back and get your fluid level checked properly after your cooling lines are all full and all that. So anyways, I know this video is very long. I hope it helps anybody with this transmission, you know, make an informed choice about what you want to do in terms of an exchange or a change, and lets you understand that, you know, there are options out there a lot cheaper than the dealership. Follow up. So my vehicle, I exchanged all my fluid with Valvoline Max Life. I can't personally say that I've noticed a significant difference in the drivability, in the shifting or anything like that. Does it shift smooth with Valvoline Max Life? Yeah, it shifts just fine, but it shifted just fine with the original fluid too. It was always a smooth shifting transmission. I can't say that I noticed anything. When I finally did realize that I could get the exchange done at the Great Canal Change, after they did the fluid exchange and the vehicle was extremely hot, I did notice when the level wasn't correctly leveled, I would get a whining noise, a very slight whining noise, only at high RPM, only when you know, 4,500, 5,500 RPM. And I think basically what it was when they do the exchange, your vehicle's running the whole time, so the fluid is at a fairly high temperature. And so you can't set your fluid properly at that temperature because the fluid swells. It gets, you know, takes up more space when it's hot like that. So the next day I went back, drove my vehicle there, parked it for a little while, let it cool down to the correct temperature, and then they topped it up following that procedure, and that whining went away and everything was perfect. I've driven about 4,000 kilometers on it now, and like I say, it runs fine. I can't honestly say it's better. You know, I haven't noticed anything different really about it. It doesn't get any different fuel economy. The shift points and all that all seem to be the same. Everything seems to be fine with it. So for me, that's my review. I'll do another review. Maybe I'll follow up. If you have any questions, you can post them onto the video. Yeah, so there you go. I hope that helps anybody make a decision and gives you a little bit more information about this subject.